Okay, so good afternoon or good morning to those of us who have joined us from overseas. My name is Murciano. I am the CEO of the Mitvim Institute, and I have the great honor and privilege of greeting you and welcoming you to our fifth annual conference, the Mitvim Institute's fifth annual conference, which is entitled Future Pathways for Israel's Foreign Policy. I see on the list of participants many friends and colleagues, the kind of friends that Mitvim really enjoys having a friendship with. And so we have people coming from the region, people coming from overseas, and also in the Israeli context. So maybe I'll speak a little bit about Mitvim for some of us. If you know us, then you know that we're celebrating a decade to Mitvim being established by Dr. Nimrod Goren, who will be speaking shortly. And during that decade, we undertook and have completely dedicated ourselves to the crucial mission of improving Israel's foreign relations and foreign policy, to reframe and to challenge the paradigms and assumptions, the way that the foreign policy of Israel was happening and the main issues. And this effort is very complex and dynamic, and it is based on two main parts. The first, improving the belonging, really changing the positioning of Israel in the region, both in the Middle East and in the Eastern Mediterranean and in Israeli-European relations. And the second part is to promote the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. One of the greatest challenges that we will be discussing today is the connection between these two realms, these two domains, into one effort, or two parts of a single effort. And so the Institute's conference today is meeting us, and perhaps it will be using some cliches today, and I'm sorry about that, but it is meeting us at a very crucial crossroads. It is crucial for Israel's status, for Israel's or the Israelis' quality of life, the political reality that Israel is in. So on the one hand, we have a great opportunity knocking on our door. We, of course, know the developments for over a year now. We have had normalization agreements. We have had the Abraham Accords. It is potential that has not yet been tapped into, but it is certainly there. And it is a dynamic that can certainly change the rules of the game, be a game changer, so to speak. And aside from that, we also see a kind of a foreign affairs system, both in terms of the policymakers. There are new men and women who are sharing approaches, who are bringing new ideas to the table. There is a greater willingness to review and re-examine the global and regional reality that Israel is in. And really, it is a connection between the right people and the right circumstances to try and promote foreign policy. But we're also looking at a year. And when we look forward to the next year, these have been years that are very challenging. Some of them have perhaps not been unprecedented, but are quite massive in terms of our strategic challenges. First of all, as a derivative of the pandemic, we are grappling with a series of economic, financial crises that have been and will be affecting us as well. In the north, we see Lebanon falling apart. Its social order is really just crumbling. To the east, we see an unprecedented crisis in the PA, both in terms of political legitimization and also financially. And further to the east, in Jordan, there's also a crisis that is impacting the region. If we add to that Iran becoming or trying to become a threshold nuclear state, and the US stepping away from the region. And Oscar Wilde said at the time that the fact that you're paranoid doesn't mean that you're not actually being, followed and pursued. So maybe we're imagining these challenges, but perhaps they are really there. And that brings us to the point that we understand that in the next year, we will be coping, whether we like it politically or it's not convenient for us politically, with these essential and important decisions that we will need to be making, from the Palestinian issue to the global context, such as climate, COVID, and so on. And therefore, we must, and the main message conveyed by today's conference, by Mitvim in general, is that we must have a proactive foreign policy formed. We must be able to challenge, to grapple with the challenges in advance, and we need to be, and that's what Mitvim is all about, really becoming a kind of lab for ideas, a kind of think tank that will allow the government to see the trends and to help it form its policy as we see it. That is our role. And therefore, we are here today. We have brought together a mix of people that are really people of action, people of thought. It's a combination of friends, representatives from the Foreign Affairs Office and various other places, real opinion shapers, and a great mix of people that's very special. And the program that we have is quite rich. I want to tell you a little bit about the structure so that we all know what we're going to go through the next few hours. We're going to start with short greetings, opening remarks. We have the honor of having with us the Minister of Regional Cooperation, Isawi Frej, alongside Member of Knesset Ruth Wasserman Lander, co-chair of the Lobby for the Advancement of the Abraham Accords at the Knesset. They will be followed by a panel on the trends in Israel's foreign policy, and that will be participated and attended by the Mitvim Institute experts. Each of these experts will be discussing the trends, but we'll also start talking about recommendations for policy, where we're headed, how we should grapple with, and perhaps a small taste of a document we will be issuing later this week or at the beginning of next week, which is a new plan for Israel's foreign policy. And then we will move on to the actual policy makers, the foreign policy makers. We have two people speaking in that part of the conference in terms of their approach. We have with us Alon Ushpiz, who is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Director General, and he will review the goings on in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but also a look to the future. And we also will have with us a member of Knesset, Emily Moati, who is the chair of the Subcommittee for Foreign Affairs in the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee at the Knesset, and she will look at the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle and how they analyze foreign policy regionally and domestically. And then we will end it with a panel that's looking a bit towards the future, perhaps not years ahead, but the nearer future. We're going to look at the opportunities and challenges for Israel's foreign relations in the next 12 or 15 months that are perhaps not always being addressed as they should be, not winning the attention that they should. And so we really have a very impressive lineup of speakers today. This conference is really so interesting, and it would not be possible if it weren't for our great partners, the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, and we would really like to express our gratitude to them for that. And with that, I will pass on the podium to Micky. Micky Drill, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Gil. Thank you all very much. First of all, I would like to apologize on behalf of Dr. Paul Pash, who appears on the event program. He is unwell and has asked me, really at the very last minute, to say a few words on his behalf. And I am doing so happily. Nimrod and Gil and distinguished guests. The Middle East conflict plays a key role in the work of the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, which has committed itself to tightening the political, social, and economic ties between Israel and its neighbors. And therefore, we create frameworks for dialogue between Israelis and Palestinians and disseminate information on these issues to the public. The Foundation's work in Israel seeks to ensure that even during crises, those who support peace will not be silenced. We therefore need partners, comrades, and the partner, our main partner in this area is the Mitvim Institute. We have the privilege of accompanying Mitvim since its inception over a decade ago. We even helped it come to life to see this beautiful child being delivered. We saw it develop and grow and become impactful. It is now rated as one of the most important institutes, not only in Israel, but in the region. I can tell you that just a few days ago, there was a meeting between a small group of Mitvim staff and the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung President Martin Schulz, who was also head of the European Parliament formerly, and he and his staff were very impressed with what they saw. And towards the end of their visit here in Israel, they were very enthusiastic about Mitvim. And you know what? Rightfully so. None of this were possible if it weren't for the dedicated and super talented staff of Mitvim. It is a delight to work with you. We collaborate on many issues, Israel and the Eastern Mediterranean basin, promoting the Israeli-Palestinian peace, Israel and the Middle East, Israel and Europe, and more. And throughout the year, we collaborate, but it is always during the fall, during the autumn, that we publish a report on foreign policy and hold the annual conference. I think that the theme today, or this year, is very important. So let us go together, let us join hands and look at the future pathways for Israel's foreign policy. I really think there is optimism in the air, and it is a huge honor to be here with you. And on behalf of the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, thank you all so much for joining us today. And finally, let me congratulate Dr. Gil Murciano, the new CEO of Mitvim Institute, for assuming your new position. Good luck to you. And thank you to Dr. Nimrod Goren, the founder and president of the Mitvim Institute, for all you've done. Nimrod, thank you so much for years of collaboration, and we wish you luck. Okay, I think I've spoken enough. Let us start. I wish us all a very interesting and fruitful conference. Thank you. Thank you very much, Micky. The collaboration between Mitvim and the Stiftung has certainly allowed us to reach these heights that you have mentioned. So congratulations to you, Gil, as well, for assuming a new position just a few months ago, just as the new government was formed, actually. So each with their own achievements. Good luck. My name is Nimrod Goren. I'm the president and founder of Mitvim Institute. I am also very happy to be taking part in the opening remarks. This is the Mitvim Institute's 5th annual conference. And as Gil said, it is being held in a special year, 10 years to the inception of the Institute, but also over a year of new opportunities, of a reality that is a little different that we're trying to leverage. We are 4 or so months into the new government, and we're talking about the future pathways for Israel's foreign policy. That's a discussion we'll be holding today. And I would like to say a little bit about the trends that are happening. And we're trying to take this as basis for what you'll be hearing next, but also for what policymakers who will be joining us later will be talking about. So we can talk about maybe 5 areas that we can identify where things are happening because of the new government. The first is rehabilitating ties that were harmed during Netanyahu's time with Jordan, with the Democrats in the United States. These are ties that are very important and very strategic to Israel, and perhaps they were neglected. And so the first few months of this new government were dedicated to making an effort in these areas to rebuild the trust, to reinstate channels of communication, and to hold meetings between the heads of state to base the dialogue on shared values, shared interests, and receiving a kind of mandate from these states and organizations. And sometimes it is given because of wider credit, because Netanyahu is no longer there, and because there was some problematic policy with the 2-state solution. So we're seeing that this mandate is now kind of being minimized. And the second area is to try and broaden the normalization with the Arab states. This broad spectrum of meetings and visits between ministers and heads of states and their counterparts in Arab states, new collaborations that are taking place, an attempt to upgrade relations like with Morocco to ambassador level, to also take ties like the ones with the Egyptians to the civilian area. This is all an effort that concentrates on getting these achievements. We haven't gotten to the glass ceiling yet. There's still more to be done. But here too, we have to look reality in the eye. We saw what happened today in Sudan, one of the countries we wanted to normalize relations with. So things are happening, and we can't always be sure that what we know is happening now will continue to happen tomorrow. Another area is Israel's new approach towards the Palestinian Authority, an approach that is not being accompanied, unfortunately, with the promotion of peace, but it is certainly accompanied with renewed meetings between Israeli and Palestinian ministers, including senior ministers. It also includes senior Israelis' visits to Ramallah, a coordination with the Palestinian Authority. And the idea is to really get the Palestinian Authority back from Gaza, to not have the Gaza Hamas regime be sanctified, which is because they're making it difficult for the two-state solution to take place. But this is not happening with a peace process coupled with it. So, as we know from the past, when there is no progress being made with the peace process, there's usually escalation. And when there's escalation, it usually has a negative impact on our relations with our neighbors and with other Arab states in the region. So we have to make sure we take notice of that. Another area is to promote some more ties with the Middle East. We're developing ties with Cyprus, with Greece. We're trying to have new countries join us. We're trying to do that through the gas forum. We're still ambivalent when it comes to Turkey. Erdogan and President, the Israeli president, have still not met. But we are seeing senior echelons being represented in certain forums that in the past few years have not met either. And the fifth area is Israeli diplomacy being strengthened after many years where the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was weakened intentionally for political reasons and was not able to really fulfill its purpose. Now there is a full-time minister in place. There's greater budgets. The officer is more involved in decision making, and we have to see what it's doing in these areas and what its impact is. At the same time, there's greater openness for dialogue and less criticism, or more dialogue even with those who criticize Israel. And we trying to have multilateral relations and promoting agendas, as Gil said, such as the climate crisis. All of these trends are taking place, even though the arena is getting filled with new political players. Some of them you're here today from the Knesset and government, but it's also being filled with new political issues that were not part of the dialogue in the past. Climate, gender, inclusion, ethics, democracy, these are all key components in Israel and the world. And alongside all the new changes, new players, and so on, there are also older actors that are trying to stop us from making progress in these channels that the Mitvim Institute likes to promote, which is a foreign policy that includes peace and that is modern and inclusive. And so we'll hear about all of that today. And let's talk about who we should be thanking. We'd like to thank Maya, Gil, everyone who's with us today, Micky, Nadav, Ksenia, so many people at the Institute who have taken part in organizing this conference and will be sharing with you what they do day in, day out. So again, thank you so much to the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung and the rest of our partners and supporters who continue to help us improve Israel's foreign policy.